Hey guys, this is Josh. Welcome to this video tutorial about making melodies with an arpeggiator. Okay, so just have a listen to this serum preset which I've processed a little bit. And let's mess around with an arpeggiator. So there's a few things we can look at. First thing's the rate, which is going to change how often a note is triggered. Okay, the other thing we can look at is the gate, which is going to change how long the note is held for. And then the offset changes which note is first triggered in the chord sequence. And then we can look at the swing, although we'll go and add that in later, so we won't actually touch it in this. And then we've got the style, which is the kind of way in which, or pattern, which is played. Then we can look at steps, which will just play the notes in higher octaves. Or you can set this to scales as well, but we'll just go for octaves for this example. Okay, so what we're going to do is map a few of these to some macros so that we can easily automate them. Alright, so we group this with Command G to create a MIDI effect rack. And then we can go through and map the values or parameters that we want to automate to different macros. You could automate them anyway, but throwing them into this effect rack will allow us to save it as a preset. And quite often if you have, say, a MIDI controller with 8 macro knobs, it's much nicer to just map the 8 macro knobs to 8 macro knobs in a track. Sweet as. So I'll just set these to some good default values so that, you know, when I save it and I want to come back and access this later, everything starts at a good value. Okay, so always name things appropriately. And I'll save this as a straight arpeggiator rack. You can also add in more to the chain, which I'll do. I'll bring in a velocity control as well. And I'll do that to create a more human feel to the note playing. I just like to add in a little bit of random. You can also do that by with your strums, making them all happen at slightly different times, but I won't really do that in this example. That's something that I kind of like to do at the end of the editing process, just go through and humanize everything. There's no point humanizing something if you decide you're going to delete it later. Alright, so this velocity thing, it's pretty interesting. It's got an output low and an output high. I like to set them both to the same value. And the only things I really touch is the random. Sorry about that, just had to plug my charger in. So we can map both of the outputs to the same macro so that they stay the same, and map the random to macro 7. Then I'll just color code these as well, so one color for the arpeggiator controls and another for the velocity controls. Then we'll go and rename it and save it again. When I'm done with that, I will I want to say mute, but hide the velocity control. and leave the arpeggiator there because I might want to look at what the value is of the style at some point. If I'm just messing around with style, I'll automate everything else, and then style I'll use the mouse to mess around with. And if you're using a MIDI controller, you can either automate some stuff and mess around with a few knobs, or do them all. You just got to remember there's 8 knobs and you've got 2 hands. So it can be nice to automate a couple of things if you want them to, happen, every half a bar or something like that. You'll see what I'm getting at. Right, I just realised that maybe I didn't turn the PowerPoint on. Alrighty, so let's duplicate this track so that we get the same synth. And we just set the input to the other track. So what will happen is this track, which we'll rename in a second as well, will take the output of the arpeggiated track as its MIDI input, and we can record arm it and record this new MIDI. So we'll just call this synth for this example. Delete. Sweet, record arm, and then we set up our automations in our arpeggiator track. Delete the arpeggiator in our synth track. Sweet. So let's go through and just add all these automation lanes, and we'll create a few automations. Now I'm just going to kind of do this at random. You're going to get better results if you take the time to really go in and deliberately design something cool. But to show you how powerful this process is, I'm basically just going to do some almost random stuff, and I'll still get something that sounds kind of cool out of it. Sweet. Where to start? Start with the velocity and the random. And we just do some subtle changes there to make it evolve. So, okay, I guess a slight crescendo in the velocity, and a slight increase in the random as the crescendo increases, to kind of mimic the way that, when you're playing a piano, you'd start kind of playing it a bit harder. You might just play a couple of notes a bit softer, by accident. We're not robots. So I guess that bit here is just trying to make the whole sequence sound a little bit less robotic. So let's just tweak the number of steps. I'm just making a few little points so that I can just raise 1/4. I'm not used to max. Normally you can just press Control. I don't know the max shortcut yet, so I'm just going to draw it in. So yeah, just raise this little section up by 1 octave, and that by 2. That doesn't raise the whole thing, it just means that the sequence can step up to the same notes, just in the octave above, which can give a nice variation. Alrighty, and the offset we can change more. Oh, actually, we can actually put it into draw mode. That's probably better for this. So just press B to do that, and I guess change the grids to 16ths. and you can change the grid to whatever you want. When I just have a 16th swing, I like working in 16ths. Oh, I think I just did 30 seconds. Mower. Cool. So just draw some stuff in. It doesn't really matter too much, and this is just going to create, I guess, more of a variation, almost a sense of randomness in which the starting note is, which will sound cool. Have a listen. We'll probably do the rest of our tweaks with some music on, just to hear what we're doing to it. Cool, so the gate, just, because some notes we're going to hold more, some less. Again, you could deliberately go and find which notes you want to hold, where you want them to be, and where you want the shortest stabs to be. Just for example's sake, I'm kind of making it random. You still get something that sounds kind of interesting. And the last thing to do is the rate, which I'm only going to go between 8ths and 16ths. You can add a swing by going 12ths or 6ths, but again, if I'm just in 8ths and 16ths, then when I add the 16th swing, we're not going to have any weird problems. So we'll just do all that, and then we're ready to record. And I'll move the style around while we're recording to get this really random pattern. I mean, you can also set it to random to do that, but yeah, just show the automation of style, because it's better to go in and, rather than randomly tweak it, set up deliberate changes in style at deliberate points. But I don't really want to do a 40-minute video, so I'm just going to make a random melody, just record it. Sweet as. And when we've done with that, we can select, press Ctrl Z, and then we can go in, make sure that it's not taking MIDI from the other track now, and then just listen to this, edit the MIDI notes around, and kind of personalize it, but kind of get rid of parts that don't sound so good, and maybe add in some parts that sound cool. Kind of like that groove a little bit. Third bar, so I'll duplicate that and chuck it around in some other spots, because that sounds pretty cool. Cool thing about digital recording is you can really just experiment and capture everything you experiment with. Sweet. Well, thanks for watching this, and yeah, I hope you learn a lot. Again, this is just an intro, and you can go crazy experimenting with this stuff. Cheers.